you can literally start an entire successful and productive podcast with your phone. If you go back and you watch some of the first episodes, like the very first episode, there's this dude in a shirt and a tie sitting behind a desk, talking very calm and collected, very maybe strategic, if you will, very scripted. I don't know who that guy was. He said his name was James Taylor. He said he was starting a podcast, but that guy hasn't been on the podcast in a while. And then if you've been following this, there's that time when my office flooded and I was still putting out episodes, and all I literally had was my phone. I would prop my phone up on something, point it at me, and hit record and just start talking. I'd be in a vest or like a vest jacket or even just a jacket. And behind me, my office was in shambles, but I needed to record episodes. There's a couple episodes I did in my truck. I set my phone up on the steering wheel, pressed record, and just started talking. Welcome to DFW Grit. I'm Dr. James Taylor, and I'm your host, and this is more than just a podcast. We dive into the stories of the movers, the shakers, the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, right here in the DFW Metroplex. This is your home for authentic, real stories that prove what happens when you don't back down. Let's get to work. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dr. Taylor coming back at you with another episode of DFW Grit. As always, like, share, and follow. Today I've got a how-to. A how to do what I do with that voodoo that you do so well. It's a spell, hell. What's it make you want to do? Makes you want to shoot. Anyway, okay. Once again, tangential, immediately. So I wear a lot of hats. Chiropractor, business owner, boss and manager, landlord, father, husband, all around good guy to know, according to me. So, and for all intents and purposes, since I'm the host, that's the only opinion that matters right now. But I do all these things, and I reach out to these people, and I'm like, hey, I got a podcast. I want you to be on my podcast. And it's not too uncommon for people to be like, man, like, you're doing a podcast too? Yeah, I'm doing a podcast. How do you find the time? How do you find the time to do all these things? How do you do a podcast? Man, I'm not gonna lie, it's incredibly easy. It's literally you hit record. Like, just skip the excuses and just hit record. So what I want to do is I want to tell you how it's done, how I do it, and hopefully give you a bit of inspiration for anyone out there that might be mulling around the idea in their head. Here's some inspiration on how to do a podcast, on how to get it started. And I'll tell you right now, it's not hard. It really isn't. It's literally just a matter of hitting record and talking. So, number one, you're adding something to your plate. Just put that out there just so everyone is aware. If you're going to do a podcast, it's going to be in addition to what it is you are already doing. So just be forewarned, because you are going to set yourself up for the opportunity for burnout. So how do we do it? How do we make it work, but avoid burning ourselves out on it? Because this is a slow game. I'm going to tell you right now, starting a podcast is a slow game. Like, everyone wants to go viral. Everyone wants to be seen, but you're probably not going to be seen at the beginning. So you're going to have to do it over and over and over again. So number one, it's going to be the schedule. So if you follow the structure here, I do episode that's a solo, you and I right now, and then an interview, solo interview. When I'm scheduling my interviews, I schedule availability on 2 days. This is just how I do it. Do it on Monday and Tuesday. And if I have somebody that books a podcast slot on a Monday, then on the calendar, I take out the Tuesday. And I try and do this as far ahead as I can. But generally speaking, I give 2 availabilities in the week to record. As soon as one is taken, I take out the other one. So I'm only recording an interview with somebody else. I'm only trying to get into somebody else's schedule. That's a key point. 1 day a week. The guy who produces this, his name is Sumo. You've heard me talk about him before. He gave me some great advice when I first started. And it was, hey, start by interviewing your friends first. Now, why did he tell me to do that? It's real simple. He goes, you're going to be a shitty interviewer. So at the very least, If you're interviewing your friends, there's some commonality already, there's some familiarity. It'll come off as conversational. It won't be so obvious that you're really lousy at interviewing. So start with your friends first. And that goes back to this flexible yet still somewhat non-negotiable aspect. Your friends will make time. Strangers probably not necessarily will. So you've got this schedule. Like I said, I do it on Mondays and Tuesdays, but you only get one, you don't get both. I only give one. I don't give both in the same week. There are other options available. Like I've got friends that do podcasts that they do bulk interviews. They'll set aside an entire Saturday and they'll knock out 6, 8, 10, 12 interviews because they'll stack them up. Because that is the hard thing. If you're going the interview route, you have to contend with the schedule of others. And it is just as fluidly inflexible as yours is. Things come up, things happen. So have your schedule, figure out what works best for you, and then try and get people into that. Or, like you said, you can do these bulk interviews. If that's where your podcast lies, if it's going to be an interview kind of thing. But the issue with that is like all the stuff on the front end, there are plenty of reasons why people don't start. The biggest one being like they've got this grand idea, they've got this idea they want to convey, they've got this passion, they want to speak, they want to be heard, and in so doing, and I think this is part of the human condition, is they want it to be perfect. I'm going to tell you right now, your first many episodes, they're not going to be perfect. There's no such thing as the perfect setup. And even from a nuts and bolts standpoint, I need all this stuff. I need a set. I need a background. I need multiple cameras. I need lights. I need a computer. You don't. All you need is something with the ability to record your voice. And if you want, something with the ability to record you as a person. And there's a real good chance if you're listening to this, you have that. And it's just simply it's your phone. You can literally start an entire successful and productive podcast with your phone. If you go back and you watch some of the first episodes, like the very first episode, there's this dude in a shirt and a tie sitting behind a desk, talking very calm and collected, very very maybe strategic, if you will, very very scripted. I don't know who that guy was. He said his name was James Taylor. He said he was starting a podcast, but that guy hasn't been on the podcast in a while. And then if you've been following this, there's that time when my office flooded and I was still putting out episodes, and all I literally had was my phone. I would prop my phone up on something, point it at me, and hit record, and just start talking. I'd be in a vest or like a vest jacket, or even just a jacket, and behind me, my office was in shambles, but I needed to record episodes. There's a couple episodes I did in my truck. I set my phone up on the steering wheel, pressed record, and just started talking. Because that, for all intents and purposes, that is all you need. You do not need all of this. For a nuts and bolts kind of thing, you can get away with one camera. And if you have a phone, you probably have that camera and it has a microphone. That's all you need to get going. You do not need the camera with the lens and the key lights and the light box, the soft boxes. What do they say? A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, something like that. A podcast of 1,000 episodes starts with an iPhone, or maybe even an Android. I bet you could probably do it on there too. But then the next thing is, okay, well, like beyond the nuts and bolts thing, people are like, well, I don't know what to talk about. There is a really good chance that in the past 7 days, you have had a conversation with somebody that you could turn into an episode. I all but guarantee it, because odds are you've spoke with somebody about something that you are either knowledgeable on or passionate about, or both. Something that could be passionate in the positive, something that brought you joy. It could be something that's, to quote Peter Griffin, that really grinds your gears. That conversation is an episode. Another piece of advice that Sumo gave me at the start of this, he goes, "You're not Joe Rogan. You're not putting out 4-hour episodes. You're putting out 10 to 20 minutes. Some of them stretch into 40, but still, you're not that. You don't need to fill that kind of time because that can absolutely be daunting. But again, there were umpteen opportunities, umpteen conversations that you have had in the past week that you could easily turn into a podcast episode. And then as these things build up, as these episodes go on, one of the things that I've done is I transcribe every single one of these and I put it into ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has every word that has ever been said on any episode of DFW Grit or Fueled by Spite before it. So on occasions when I'm like, hey, I don't know what to talk about. I need an episode. What do I talk about? I ask ChatGPT, hey, what do you feel that you can glean from past episodes that you think I am confident on, that I am knowledgeable on to create another episode around? And it'll spit out ideas and I'll grab the one that resonates with me in the moment. That's a great idea. Hell, one thing I did at the very beginning, I feel my titles used to be far more creative. And maybe even just to me, but I would come up with just funny titles, clickbaity titles, and then just build an episode around that. And they would come from all kinds of stuff. They would come from chiropractic stuff. They would come from interactions with patients, interactions with employees, hell, friends, spouses, kids. There's an episode where I just talked to my kids for 20 minutes. But if you if you have the ability to speak, and there's anything that if you have the ability to speak and you have had experiences, boom, there's your podcast episode. There's what you'll talk about. Even just from the growth mindset or the business standpoint. If you are in either of those two verticals in any way, shape, or form, there's probably a really good chance that you have signed up for a newsletter. And they are probably, if they're like mine, they're sitting unopened in your inbox, save for a select few. Those newsletters are simply nothing more than outlines. Odds are, if you signed up for a newsletter, it was something that you liked or that you were intrigued by, that you want to learn more about, or that you already know something about. And so you'll have people wonderfully and lovingly, but unknowingly, sending you outlines to podcast episodes. Talk about what it is you read in the newsletter, how it resonated with you, or how it was complete and absolute and utter bullshit. There's your podcast episode. I don't know what to say. No, you do. You just need to actually sit down and just think about it for a hot second. Well, okay, so I don't know what to say. Well, you gave me some ideas. Well, you're welcome. But what if nobody listens? At the start, they won't. Nobody is going to listen to you at the start. Again, save for your friends and acquaintances. But what are you doing at the start of this? You're practicing in public. It goes back to what Sumo told me. Hey, interview your friends first because you got to practice because you're not very good. How do you know I'm not good? I haven't done any episodes. That's how I know you're not any good because you haven't done any episodes. Nobody is going to listen at the beginning. There's a following that has to be made. But the thing is, this is a wonderful give and take because I'll tell you right now, I am an army. I am an army of one. But I've got Sumo that produces it. I've got friends that now have built up a thing where like they'll reach out like, hey, my buddy's got a podcast. My friend has a podcast. Or if I go into a business and I love the way it's run, or I've had patients here that I just met you, new person, new patient, but you're really cool. And I feel like you've got stuff to share. I meet someone at a networking meeting and literally all you do is you say, hey, I have a podcast. And people are blown away because if you don't have one, you think it's impressive. And to a lot of degree, it is. It is impressive to add this into your repertoire, to add this onto your to-do list because so many people are afraid to do it themselves. I was at a networking event. I had a couple of guests on here since then. I was at a networking event. I had sponsored the event, and I had sponsored it as the former podcast Fueled by Spite, now DFW Grit. But the guy who was running it said, he's thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to Joe Roofer. Thank you to Cigars on 35. Thank you to Dr. Taylor. He is the host of DFW Grit. And then after the accolades were shared and the introductions were made and the mingling commenced, people just came up to me. You have a podcast? Yeah. Can I be on it? Of course. Of course you can. Because what is this? This is, if nothing else, it's a wonderful um, tool for collaboration because you bring people on and then you put the episodes out and you tag them. And what do? They share it with all their friends. And then their friends see it and they're like, hey, how'd you get on that? And he's like, I met the guy at a networking event. Do you think he'd have me on? I don't know. I can reach out and ask. And all of a sudden, boom, then you're starting to stockpile guests. Then you're starting to get people that actually kind of want to do this because to you, it's nothing grand per se after you knock out a few of these and you get the ball rolling. But to somebody who hasn't done this before, you have a podcast? That's amazing. Can I be on it? Of course. And they come in and they see it's just a couple of cameras and a computer. It's not incredibly difficult whatsoever. And the bare minimum setup, again, is really all you need is a phone. Mine looks fancy because I have two cameras and some lights and a microphone. Now, this is definitely stuff that you can build, that you can collect, that you can curate as it goes on. If you go back to previous episodes, I didn't have this TV. I didn't have this fancy wall behind me. Like I said, I pointed my phone at myself. And then later on, I pointed my phone at me and another person as we were just standing by a desk, just talking. But it's not hard. It literally, the only thing that you have to do is simply just press record. The bare minimum is just something that can capture that voice. Now, then you go into content. What do I say? Like, I don't know what to say. Once I figure it out, how do I know what to say? Just find your angle. What is it? It goes back to what you're passionate about. What are you able to talk about for 10, 15, or 20 minutes? And then as you pile these episodes up, you'll realize truly you've probably got a lot to say. And it's really easy once you get going to figure out your angle, to figure out your bent. Are you growth and mindset? Are you health and wellness? Are you construction? Are you a roofer or a paver or a landscaper? Are you in finance? Because there's umpteen different verticals that you could fall into, and you find one that you can talk about, and then you'll find other people who want to talk about that same thing, and they'll want to listen to other people talk about that same thing. It's truly, once you get rolling, it's not hard at all. What makes you happy or what makes you sad? What makes you pissed off? Shoot. What do you wake up thinking about in the morning? There are plenty of episodes where I woke up and I didn't know what I was going to do that day, and just the random thoughts that spool through a person's mind as the day gets going. There's your episode. There's your angle. Now, how are you going to set it up? What is the structure? You'll see again, mine, I go solo interview, solo interview, solo interview. Now, why is that? It adds a buffer in my schedule. Because again, if you're interviewing, you are at the mercy of other people's schedules and things come up. So by putting in my solo episodes every other one, it gives me leeway. It gives me the ability to pivot when something comes up in a potential interviewee's schedule. But again, if you're doing like a cluster booking thing, like we talked about before, just a massive, hey, I'm going to record 6 episodes that day. If 4 people show up out of the 6, cool, you still got 4 episodes. But my structure here is simply just, it's an interest in working with not only my calendar, but the calendar of the people that I want to come in here. So if you've been sitting here and you've been thinking like, man, I want to start a podcast. Allow me this opportunity that I hold oh so dearly to say, you're welcome. You're welcome for what? You're welcome for removing any excuses that you've had about why it can't happen and why it won't work. Because again, if you're listening to this, you're probably listening on a device that has everything that you need to start a podcast. Where do I put it? Put it on Facebook, put it on YouTube. It's free and available to everybody. Well, what about all these other platforms? Yeah, they're all out there. But just go with the one that's most readily available to you right now. And Facebook and YouTube are free for anybody and everybody. You can hit record, then you hit stop, then you hit upload. There's episode number 1. So, once again, you're welcome for removing the excuse that you no longer have. But beyond that, I'd like to issue a challenge for you. For those of you who have been thinking about this, this is something I would really like to do. What's stopping me? Well, nothing anymore. So record your first episode and do me a favor, and I want you to tag me in it. Tag me in your episode once it's released, once it's uploaded, once it's dropped, as they say. But beyond that, if you're going to do me that solid, I'm going to ask that you do me one more. Don't ask me if it was any good. I will gladly watch it, but I'll tell you right now, it's probably not going to be good. And that's okay, because this is going to take a while to find your voice, to find your ground, to find your platform. But hit record, then hit stop, then hit upload, and then tag at DFW Grit, at James Taylor. Let me watch it. Let me see how you did. No, not even that. Let me see that you did it. Just record a 5-minute episode this week. Episode number 1. And write an outline that says, I don't know what this is, but it's a start. It's really that easy. The only thing you got to do is hit record. So, as always, and I hope this is more true now than ever before, you will learn more here by accident than elsewhere by design. And as we've closed out other episodes, feel free to find your own tagline or steal this one. Prior to this episode, you were one of two things. You were either ignorant or you were just uninformed. After this wonderful list of tips and tricks and how-tos, you can at least say that you are no longer uninformed. Thanks to this episode of DFW Grit and your gracious and knowledgeable and charismatic host, Dr. James Taylor. As always, you guys like, share, follow. I appreciate your time today. If this is something you've been waiting to do, you don't have an excuse anymore because I just told you how to do it. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.